All right, we're still in section 1.4. Now what I'm going to do is show you how you can test a deductive argument for validity, and we actually sort of touched on this a little bit before. It's all based on whether you can make the conclusion other than what it is, and if it still seems to work with the premises, in the sense that the premises actually could deliver that other conclusion, then you know that you're dealing with an argument that's not valid. Because if you really have a valid argument, those premises, assuming they're true, can only deliver that one conclusion. Valid deductive arguments, that one conclusion has to be 100% certain, has to follow with necessity. But if you can make that conclusion different, and that seems to work with those premises, then you don't have a valid structure, okay? Because deductive arguments is we want that one conclusion to strictly follow from those premises, and nothing else can follow, okay? So let's go into this. Actually, let me do this first. You remember when I said if it's raining outside, last video, then the streets are wet. The streets are wet, therefore it's raining outside. You remember we said this was invalid. And the reason is it'll fail this test. We can test this. Is this valid? We could do this. Well, is it possible or that it's not raining? Let's see, if it's raining outside, then the streets are wet. The streets are wet, therefore it's not raining. That's possible. Maybe, you remember I said the sprinklers could be on, so we could do this. If it's not raining, meaning sprinklers are on, because the streets are wet, right? We'll say sprinklers are on. So let's do it this way. If it's raining outside, then the streets are wet. Your little girl opens up the curtain and she says, Mommy or Daddy or friend, the streets are wet. Well, it could be raining or sprinklers could be on. So if you can make the conclusion other than what it is, if you can falsify it, and the different conclusion will work, then you know it's not a valid deductive argument, because a valid deductive argument should only deliver this. If this can be sprinklers or raining, then this means it's raining outside doesn't follow with strict necessity. Okay, that was a lot there, and some of it was redundant, but I hope just the different ways I keep describing validity will help, and it will help make this test for the validity of a deductive argument make sense. Okay? So let's start here. How to test a deductive argument for validity. Essentially, you're testing an argument's inferential claim. Do the premises imply the conclusion or not? And I can even make that more specific. That conclusion. Okay? That one conclusion. That one and only one conclusion, okay? All right, so remember, a valid deductive argument is an argument where it is impossible for the conclusion to be false or other than it is, like sprinklers are on, because it is strictly inferred from the premises, which you assume that they're true. Strictly inferred means it follows with 100% certainty. So if that's the definition of a valid deductive argument, a deductive argument that's valid in structure, then here we have a test. Second point here. Conversely, an invalid deductive argument is an argument in which it is possible for the conclusion to be false or other than the one stated. So it's possible that sprinklers are on, given that the premises are true, which means the conclusion stated is not necessarily 100% certain, which violates the definition of a valid deductive argument. So with this, here's our test. Based on these definitions, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to come up with a test. Okay, here's our test. Assume the premises are true, nothing new here, be a Martian, they're just true, okay? It's okay to assume because validity, this is redundant again, but it's intentional, is not about whether premises, conclusion are true, but rather about the relationship between premises and conclusion. Determine if it is possible for the conclusion to be false, different than it already is. Can you put in, so to speak, another option like, well, the sprinklers could be on and that could work. If that is another option, it's not a valid deductive argument because that's only about one conclusion. If the conclusion can't be anything else, this is important, with the given premises other than what you see written down, meaning you can't falsify the conclusion because the newly falsified conclusion clearly contradicts or won't work with the premises, then the argument has valid structure, okay? And the reason being is that this contradiction demonstrates that another conclusion other than the one originally stated is not possible with these premises. So if you have, you have a premise and you have a premise and then you have your conclusion, right? If you cannot make another conclusion work, like conclusion prime there, if you can't change this, because when you do, it just doesn't work, it's valid because it shows this is the only one that will work. So when the book says the new primed conclusion prime, or a different one other than the one you have written down there, if it creates a contradiction, what the book means is you see that there's a problem. You see that from those premises you can't get conclusion prime or that other conclusion you wrote down. That's a good sign. It means it's valid. Okay? So let me read this again. If the conclusion can't be anything else with the given premises other than what you see written down, meaning you can't falsify the conclusion because the newly falsified conclusion clearly contradicts or won't work with the premises, then the argument has valid structure. The reason being is that this contradiction, or you change the conclusion and it's just not working, you go, wait a minute, those premises will not give us that, because that new conclusion clearly contradicts there. That's what the book means by a contradiction. This demonstrates that another conclusion other than the one originally stated is not possible. Let me give you some examples here. I'll focus on two here to show you this, okay? Earth is closer to the sun than Mars, okay? Now, we're going to assume that what we're given in the premises is true. Now notice, we don't even have to know what the order of the planets in the solar system really are, okay? I'm not going to draw out the sun and then, let's see, I actually wrote it down, Mars, Venus, Earth, no, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and then Pluto. Apparently that's a planet or not. I sort of heard stuff like that. It's not a planet, I don't know. But notice, I don't have to write down what the real location of the planets are. I'm just going to I'm a Martian, and I'm just looking at this, and I'm going to take these premises for what they are, because validity is about structure, not about the truth of the content. So it says Earth is closer to the sun than Mars. So I'll do this. I'll make a sun. That's a big sun, and I'm not promising this being to scale. And you have Mars out here, so this is Mars, and it says Earth is closer to the sun than Mars. So I will make this Earth, and that's Earth, okay? Earth is closer to the sun than Mars, and we're going this direction, right? Okay. Then the second premise is Venus is closer to the sun than Mars. So I'll put Venus here, and there. So Venus is closer to the sun than Mars. Now it's concluding, therefore we know with 100% certainty that Earth is closer to the sun than Venus. But a Martian or anybody, if you go, well, just looking at this, I don't know that could be true. Earth could actually be closer to the sun than Venus. But we don't have enough information. All it's telling us is Earth and Venus is closer to the sun than Mars. But it hasn't told us anything about the relationship of Earth and Venus to each other, to the sun. Because we could, so here's the test. If this is valid, these premises really deliver this and only this, right? This one and only conclusion, we shouldn't be able to falsify this or make this different. But it seems like we can make it different. Couldn't we write in here, or Venus is closer to the sun than Earth? But a Martian would look at this and go, you know what, based on those premises, this is possible. It doesn't lead to a contradiction. So Earth could be closer to the sun than Venus, based on this, or Venus could be closer to the sun than Earth. Both of these are possible. So if you remember the test is, determine if it's possible for the conclusion to be false, different than it already is. Okay? If the conclusion can't be anything else, if you can't do that, it's valid. But here, we made the conclusion different, and it works with these premises don't rule this out. So there is no contradiction, there is no problem. This is invalid, okay? And notice, I didn't need to pull out a chart of the solar system, the real solar system, to figure this out. We just assume premises as given. Okay, let's go to another example here. All right, right up here. Venus is closer to the sun than Earth. Okay, so we'll get the sun up there again. It's the sun. And we have the Earth here. And it says Venus is closer to the sun than Earth. So we'll make this Venus. All right, and then the second premise, Earth is closer to the sun than Mars. All right? And then the conclusion is Venus is closer to the sun than Mars. All right, so we do our test. I didn't draw out or show you again a real chart of the solar system. We're just taking these as given because validity is about structure. We don't know if this is true or false. We're looking at the logic. Do these premises, assuming that they're true, deliver this with 100% certainty? If it is, it's valid. The way we can find out is let's try to change this. Let's try to say Venus is not closer, so that's falsifying the conclusion, is not closer to the sun than Mars. Okay? Venus is not closer. Now, if you write this, or it could be this, you know, right there, this clearly won't work. There is a contradiction. You know, you can't from here ever get that Venus is not closer to the sun than Mars, because it says Venus is closer to the sun than Earth. Earth is closer to the sun than Mars. There's no way. See, we falsified the conclusion. That's what this is. And there is a clear contradiction. So this means this is a valid deductive argument. The structure is correct. The bones are lined up. The skeleton is lined up right. Because when we try to change this, falsify it, make it other than it is, a problem arises. It doesn't work. So this is valid. These premises only deliver one and only one conclusion. Another option isn't possible, like the sprinklers being on. Okay? And then I have some examples here. I'm not going to go into all of them, but if you went through these, the way you would decide if it's valid or invalid, you'd read this, you'd understand it, and ask yourself, is it possible with these two premises here that NBC is not a media company? And it is not possible. You're going to find that this is valid. This one here, all automakers are computer manufacturers. Now that's not even true. So it's just to show you, I gave you an example here where the premises are not true in real life, but you just assume that they're true. United Airlines is an automaker? No, it's an airline carrier. United Airlines doesn't even make airplanes. It certainly doesn't make cars. But if you figure, go through these two premises, you'll find that this conclusion follows, and there's no way United Airlines, there's no way you could write down United Airlines is not a computer manufacturer. And then here, it actually is possible that Wells Fargo is not a bank. This would be valid. This would be invalid. And here's our old standby. If it's raining outside, then the streets are wet. The streets are wet. Therefore, it's raining outside. Well, is it possible that the sprinklers could be on? Yes, there's no contradiction. So that would be invalid as well. And let's go to here. You can draw some diagrams to help you. Okay, this says all television networks are media companies. So you could do a big circle, and that big circle is media. Well, we'll put it here, media companies, okay? I'll erase that. All right, and it says all TV networks are media companies. So here we got TV networks. TV networks. They're in the media company circle. And then it says NBC is a television network. So in here, we're going to have NBC, right? And therefore, NBC is a media company. Is there any way that NBC is not a media company? Based on what you drew here, we don't see an N over here, right? Outside the media company, we don't see that. So if you make NBC not a media company, you have a problem. And there's a contradiction. It results, you can't infer NBC is not a media company from these two premises given. Okay, I know that's a lot, but this is the best example to tell you this thing was kind of automatic. You sort of were doing this test. You knew that this didn't follow with 100% certainty because as soon as I said this last video lecture, you knew, well, the sprinklers could be on or the fire hydrant could have broke. You already knew that the conclusion could be other than this, so this was not valid because that didn't follow with strict necessity. And what I did is to make this more than, well, duh, Dave, that's so simple. The best way to realize that there's more to it than that is to think of those examples with the planets. They really help bring it out, and some of these other examples. Okay, that's enough of this. Now we're going to turn to induction, but we're still going to be in section 1.4.